Okay, Wildcats, everyone at Journal page 74, Graphing All Polynomials, Part 3. Find the following information for each polynomial and then sketch a graph. Now, before we do anything, we need to first set this function equal to 0. So we're going to subtract 8x cubed from both sides. Okay, so now we have 2x to the 5th power plus 6, x to the 4th. Remember, the exponents go from highest to lowest. Now, minus 8x cubed equals 0. Okay, now the degree name, it's quintic. Okay, leading coefficient is 2. Number of terms, which would be 5 minus 1 equals 4. Okay, and it's an odd degree. Now the y-intercept is when x is 0. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to substitute 0 in for x. Okay, so y equals 2 times 0 to the 5th power plus 6 times 0 to the 4th minus 8 times 0 cubed equals, well, 0 plus 0 plus 0 equals 0. So your y-intercept is 0, 0. Okay, so we have a point at 0. That's our y-intercept. Okay, now we need to find the 0, so we're going to factor and solve. So looks like we can factor 2 and an x cubed from each term. So it's 2x cubed, which leaves 1x squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0. Okay, so now we have 2x cubed, 2 parentheses, equals 0. We know x and x makes x squared. Now we need to find all the combinations that multiply 4 combined to be 3. Okay, so let's try negative 1 times 4 equals negative 4. Negative 1 plus 4 equals 3. So our factors are x minus 1, x plus 4. So now we have 2x cubed equals 0, x minus 1 equal to 0, and x plus 4 equal to 0. So let's solve this one first. We're going to divide both sides by 2, so that's x cubed equals 0. Now we're going to take the cube root of both sides. So that's x equals 0, but multiplicity of 3. And the reason being is we know that because of the cube, we know there's 3 zeros, so there's 3 of these zeros. Okay. Now we set x minus 1 equal to 0, so x equals 1, and x plus 4 equal to 0, so x equals negative 4. So your zeros are 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, and negative 4, 0, which makes sense because since the degree was 5, we knew there was going to be 5 zeros. Okay, well, we have our 0, we have 1, and then we have negative 4. Now, we know since the leading coefficient is positive for a quintic, we know it's decreasing here and it's increasing here. Okay. Now, the next thing is our turns. So we know that it has to go up. Now, we know when it's multiplicity of 2, it touches and turns, but when it's multiplicity of 3, it actually makes a cubic function at that point. Okay? So we know here is going to be a cubic function right here. So then it turns there, and then turns back up. Okay? So end behavior, as x approaches negative infinity, meaning goes left, f of x approaches negative infinity, meaning it goes down. Okay? Now as x approaches positive infinity, meaning going right, f of x goes up. So to positive infinity. All right, go ahead and finish up example 1. All right. Now let's take a look at example 2. Excuse me. All right, degree name. Now before we do that, we need to move everything to the left side. So we're going to add 5x cubed to both sides. Okay, so now we have, and actually, you know what? We're going to need 2 lines here. Okay, and wow, that line is terrible. Sorry, I know I'm wasting like 8 seconds of your life, but we really need to fix that line. All right. So now we have negative 1 x to the 4th. Remember, we do highest to lowest. So now plus 5x cubed minus 6x squared equals 0. Now, you never want to factor when there's a negative as a leading coefficient. So we need to factor out a negative 1. And actually, we're going to do that when it comes down to here. So I guess we didn't need that line. All right. So degree name we know is quartic. Leading coefficient is negative 1. Number of turns, which would be 4 minus 1 equals 3. It is an even degree. Now, the y-intercept, again, was x is 0. So now we need to substitute 0 in for each x. So that's y equals negative 1 times 0 to the 4th plus 5 times 0 cubed minus 6 times 0 squared equals, well, 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 0. So your y-intercept is 0, 0. So we have point at 0. Okay. Now we need to factor this. And this is where we're going to factor out the negative 1. So that's negative 1, which leaves 1. And actually, we can actually factor out more than that. We can factor out an x squared. So negative 1x squared, which leaves 1x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. Okay, so now we have negative 1x squared. You want to factor everything first before you start solving. We know x and x. Now we need to find all the combinations that multiply to give you 6 and combine to be negative 5. So negative 1 times negative 6 is positive 6. Negative 1 minus 6 is negative 7. That doesn't work. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. Negative 2 minus 3 is negative 5. That works. So our factors are x minus 2, x minus 3. Now we set them equal to 0. So we have negative 1, x squared equals 0. Divide both sides by negative 1. So x squared equals 0. Take the square root of both sides. Remember, square root is plus or minus. So that's x equals plus or minus 0. So that x equals 0 multiplicity of 2. Okay. Now we set x minus 2 equal to 0. So x equals 2. And x minus 3 equal to 0. So x equals 3. So we have 0 already. We have x equals 2. And x equals 3. So our zeros are 0, 0, 0, 0. Nope, I stole some space from the end behavior. So let me actually add the zeros here. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, which is a great time to promote the big whiteout. It's amazing. So when you make a mistake like I just did, you just take it and look at that. It's like it was never there. Okay. And we're going to actually white this out and move end behavior here. Okay. So first things first, we know that since it's a leading coefficient of -1, it opens downward. Okay. So we're here and here. Now, when it's a multiplicity of 0, it touches and turns. So it touches, turns right there. Okay. And you kind of see it makes that parabola, right? And then it goes down. It has to come back up to here, through, and then go back down. Okay. So our end behavior, as x approaches -infinity, meaning going left, f of x approaches -infinity, meaning going down. Okay. Now as x approaches positive infinity, meaning goes right, f of x approaches -infinity, meaning going down. All right, if you would go to finish up example 2. Now, in example 1, example 2, they were both factorable. Okay. Now, in example 3 and 4, I'm just going to tell you right now, they're not factorable. Okay. I wanted to show you 2 that were factorable and 2 that were not factorable. Okay. All right. So example 3. We have everything to the one side, so we can just set this equal to 0. Okay. The degree name is cubic. The leading coefficient is 6. Okay. Number of turns is 3 minus 1, which equals 2. It's an odd degree. Okay. And then the y-intercept is when x is 0. So y equals 6 times 0 cubed plus 11 times 0 squared minus 3 times 0 minus 2, so that equals -2. So your y-intercept is 0, -2. Okay. Now, I'm going to show you that's not factorable. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're factor by grouping. So the only thing you factor from these two terms is x squared, which leaves 6x plus 11. And then the only thing you factor from here is -1, which leaves 3x plus 2. You can see that these are not the same, so it's not factorable. When it's not factorable, now you need to do p divided by q. So p is all the factors of the last term, okay, the constant. So that's plus or minus 1 plus or minus 2. Now q is all the factors of the leading coefficient. So that's plus or minus 1 plus or minus 2 plus or minus 3. 4 doesn't work. 5 doesn't work. Plus or minus 6. Okay. Now we need to do p divided by q. So when you divide both by 1, so that's plus or minus 1 plus or minus 2. Now we divide everything by 2. So 1 divided by 2 is plus or minus 1/2. And then 2 divided by 2 is 1, which you already have. And then 1 divided by 3 is plus or minus 1/3. And then 2 divided by 3 is plus or minus 2/3. Okay? And then we're going to divide 6 by each term, so that's plus or minus 1/6. And then 2 divided by 6 is just 1/3. So that's all of the factors. Okay, now we're going to use synthetic division. So then that's 6, 11, negative 3 minus 2. Okay, now to save us some time, let's go ahead and graph this and find one of the zeros. Pause. I had to grab a calculator. All right, so we're going to go to all new document, no, add graph, and let's graph this. So that is 6x cubed plus 11x squared minus 3x minus 2. Now, it looks like we have a 0 at negative 2. And the other two zeros are going to be fractions or decimals, okay? So we're going to start with synthetic division with negative 2, okay? All right, so we'll start with negative 2. Okay, so now we bring down the 6. Negative 2 times 6 is negative 12. That combines to be negative 1. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. Negative 3 and 2 is negative 1. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. We have a remainder is 0. So we know one of our zeros is negative 2, 0. Now, this was x cubed. Now it's x squared, so we can factor it. So we have 6x squared minus 1x minus 1 equal to 0. Okay, now this is not factorable, so we're going to use the quadratic formula. Okay, so x equals a negative times a negative is a positive 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 1 squared minus 4 times 6 times negative 1 divided by 2 times 6. Okay, at that point, I'm okay if you use your calculator to get the x values. So let's do that now. Okay, so you're going to new document, no, add calculator. Okay, now remember, control divide, that was negative negative 1, which became a positive 1. And then we're going to do plus first, control square root of parentheses negative 1 square. This is the most common mistake. Whenever you square a negative number, it has to be in parentheses. Minus 4 times 6 times negative 1 divided by 2 times 6 is 1/2. So x equals 1 divided by 2. Now I'm going to highlight this, press enter, change the plus to a minus, and then the other x is negative 1/3. Okay? All right? So we have our zeros are negative 1 and 1/2, comma 0. All right, so to graph those, we have negative 2, so we're going to put negative 2 about right there, negative 1/3 right here, and 1/2 right here. Okay? Now, we know since it's cubic and the leading coefficient is positive, we know it's increasing from left to right. Okay? Now it has 2 turns. So here's 1 turn and 2 turns. Okay? And behavior. So as x approaches negative infinity, that means left, f of x approaches negative infinity, meaning it goes down. Okay? Now as x approaches positive infinity, meaning it goes right, f of x approaches positive infinity, meaning it goes up. Okay? Go and finish up example 3. All right, now let's take a look at example 4. All right. Now, it looks like everything's to the left, so we can go ahead and start naming the degree. So that's cubic. Leading coefficient's 1. Number of turns is 3. Minus 1 equals 2. Excuse me. It's an odd degree. The y-intercept is when x is 0. So y equals 0 cubed plus 0 squared minus 2 times 0 minus 8, which that equals negative 8. We want to 0, negative 8. So negative 8 right here. Okay. Now, we know it's not factorable. We're going to show you why it's not factorable. Again, factor by grouping, so we can factor out an x squared, which leaves x plus 1. And we can factor out a negative 2, which leaves x plus 4. You can see here that these are not the same when factoring by grouping, so this is not factorable. So now we're going to do p divided by q. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a line, space, leaving my space or self space to do synthetic division. Okay, so p would be all the terms of here. So that's plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 4, plus or minus 5 doesn't work, 6 doesn't work, 7 doesn't work, plus or minus 8. Okay, and then divided by plus or minus 1. So now we do p divided by q, which is when you divide everything by 1, you just have plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 4, and plus or minus 8. Okay. Now we're going to use synthetic division. So we have 1, 1, negative 2, negative 8. To save ourselves time, let's find one of the zeros from graphing. So we're going to go to New Document, No, Add Graph, and we're going to graph x cubed plus x squared minus 2x minus 8. And it looks like we have a 0 at 2. So we're going to use synthetic division using 2. Okay. So bring down to 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 1 and 2 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. Combines to be 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Remainder of 0. So we know that this is a 0. So 2 comma 0. Okay. Now we have 1x squared plus 3x plus 4 equals 0. Now, I'm just letting you know that this isn't factorable, so we're going to use the quadratic formula. Okay, so x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4 divided by 2 times 1. Okay, so let's plug that into our calculator. So new document, no, add calculator. So then that's control divide, negative 3, plus control square root, 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4 divided by 2 times 1. It gives us a non-real calculation. So what we're going to do is actually do some of the work with the calculator, but we're not going to do it all at once, okay? So what we have to do is x equals, we know negative 3, we know plus or minus. Let's do what's, no, right, I can't. So let's do 3 squared minus 4, not 4 squared, 4 times 1 times 4 equals negative 7. That's why the calculator gives that, because it's an imaginary answer. Now, 7 is a prime number, so you can't reduce this anymore, but we know that the square root of a negative number is I. So we have x equals negative 3 plus or minus I square roots of 7 divided by 2. So one of our zeros is real, 2 of them are imaginary. Okay? All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what the graph of the calculator looks like on that. Okay, we know that we have 2 here. Okay, so we're going to go to On, New Document, No, Add Graph. So we have x cubed plus x squared minus 2x minus 8. Press Enter. And I'm actually going to go to Menu, Window Zoom, and I'm going to do Zoom Out. I'm going to click once, and that's enough to see our graph. So using our calculator, we can finish the sketch of the graph. So here we have that it goes through there and goes back up. Okay, so we know that using our calculator, we have this portion. We know it's going down here, and then it goes up, down, and through. And that's just the reality of when you have imaginary solutions, you're going to have to use your calculator to sketch the graph, okay? All right. So now end behavior, as x approaches negative infinity, that means going left, f of x approaches negative infinity going down. As x approaches positive infinity going right, f of x approaches positive infinity, meaning going up. If you would, go ahead and finish up example 4, start working on your assignment, and have a wonderful Wildcat day.